Hello and welcome to Sliders and Wings, a podcast about the TV show Sliders
and the TV show Wings
and all the other forgotten TV shows of the 90s.
I'm Valerie Temple.
And I'm Rachel Cox.
What's up, Rachel?
Nothing. We were just discussing off mic that I'm either over-caffeinated and talking too fast or under-caffeinated and in a delirium. So I'm going to try to hit that stride in between.
Yeah, well, no one's perfect. So.
No one's perfect at 9 o'clock.
No, I don't know why we do this to ourselves.
I find it interesting how sometimes when I'm preparing to do this podcast, sometimes I think the show will be better than it is. I do think we have more fun when it is a stupid show.
You're right. And we're lucky this week because we're talking about Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Thank God.
Yeah.
They said a woman doctor could not survive alone on the new frontier. But I won't give up. And I'm not alone anymore. I've inherited a family. And that may be the biggest challenge of all.
So what is your history with this show?
Oh, I watched it every single week with my mom.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Every single week. And it does not seem like the type of show that I'd be into. But when I was a kid, I was really on that frontier shit.
You're on that tip.
Oh, I was on it. I watched Little House on the Prairie. There was a show called Christie with Kelly Martin. I think this all stems from my love of Anne of Green Gables. Anything with a puffy sleeve.
I had never seen it before. I mean, I knew what it was. I think my memory of it was, oh, that's schlocky, corny, cheesy stuff that I would watch. But I had just read that this show, it's not on CBS, but it's on Paramount Plus, and it's called Yellowstone, starring Kevin Costner, that it's like one of the biggest hit TV shows right now. And it's about a family on the Western frontier in modern day in Yellowstone. And it's kind of like Succession for conservatives.
Uh-huh.
It's like family dynasty fighting with another family over land rights and businesses. And then there's flashbacks to the 1800s and Native Americans and stuff. And then I started watching Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And I thought, I think every generation just needs its little Americana show.
Yeah.
Everyone likes a little Americana show.
I had just learned about Yellowstone, actually, even though it's like in its third season. I was like, what? I've never even heard of it. It's in its third season? How?
You only find that show if you Google, what's Kevin Costner up to?
It does have the involvement of someone I'm a fan of. So the show was created by Tyler Sheridan, who is a writer-director, and he wrote these movies, Hell or High Water, Wind River, Sicario, and they're all really, really good. He's got a real, not Midwest, but in the middle of America, the flyover states perspective, and it's very interesting. Wind River is a police drama about a murder on a reservation. I forget where, like Wyoming or something. It's really excellent.
I'm intrigued. I like horses. I used to ride horses.
Ooh, really?
Yeah, I went to a horseback riding camp in West Virginia.
Were you a horse girl, Rachel?
I would say I'm the same kind of adult that I was as a kid, which is I did a little bit of everything and I didn't do anything well. So,
so you tried it.
I know how to ride a horse, and I galloped maybe twice. Twice I got to galloping. I have to say that like horseback riding and skiing still freak me out generally because they're sports that are so dangerous they even kill rich people.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't learn to fly. Don't learn to pilot a plane. Don't horseback ride. Don't go skiing. I mean,
if you just follow those rules, you'll be safe.
When I was a kid, I thought that because I think John Lennon's murder is in the news so much, and then that woman from My Sister Sam's murder was in the news so much, that I thought that every famous person eventually got killed by a stalker. And I was like, I'm never going to be famous. I mean, I'm dead in the water.
That's a very specific fear. And a lot of things have to happen before
I was destined for greatness, right? I had
Yes.
to tamp it down.
You have to like put the brakes on. I'm getting too famous.
This is also the same child that would cry every night because I realized I would never be on the Mickey Mouse Club, the new Mickey Mouse Club. I was like, I don't even know where the auditions are. My parents aren't helping me. I mean, I'm not going to get on this show. I just knew it wasn't going to happen. I'm interested to watch Yellowstone because I happen to have that Paramount Plus account, except I need to figure it out because I watched a little Paramount Plus last night to see the end of a Twilight Zone episode, which I think you might want to see. It's the first episode of the new Twilight Zone and it stars Kumail Nanjiani.
Ooh.
And it's about him being a stand-up comedian.
Oh, interesting.
But I swear to fucking God, there were like 100 commercials in the show. And this is an account I'm paying for. I can't figure it out. So I need to look at what the little tiers are because I got to throw them a few extra bucks, I guess, to get rid of the...
I got Paramount Plus too, but I accidentally got it through my Amazon account and it's like impossible to even figure out. I feel so dumb. One of the reasons we had to take a pass on watching Dr. Quinn on Daily Motion was all of the ads.
Okay, right.
I was like, I can't do this.
You cut it together and then downloaded it or something? Or did you purchase it and send it to me?
No, I found a download.
Oh, you found it. Okay.
Wink, wink.
Okay, so let's do a little basic info on Dr. Quinn. So I just want to say that I didn't really watch it at all, but all of my knowledge of it came from that one French and Saunders parody that I sent to you that I've seen probably 100 times.
Which is so good. I've never seen it. That was so funny. And
if you like that, you have to watch their other parodies. So their parody is Dr. Quimmin Mad Woman.
Dr. Quim Mad Woman. And quim is like a dirty word for something. Quim is slang for vagina or vulva.
I never heard that before. Wow.
Yes.
A quim.
A quim. Doesn't that sound so British to you?
Get that quim and the queef together.
I think that's why Dawn French's character is named Fanny.
Oh, right. There's a couple of running gags in that parody, and one is that Dr. Quinn tends to just stare off into the distance and speak in metaphors and not make any sense. And people just stop listening to her because she's so boring. But then the joke that I thought was really funny that stuck with me was that every time she sees a patient, when she leaves them, she says, "She's sleeping now."
Yeah.
He's sleeping now.
That was very accurate.
Very little actual medical attention and very long periods of time where the patients are just sleeping.
And it's all off screen too. They didn't have the budget to actually show her cutting into things or whatever.
No, I couldn't believe that you see her do a C-section in the pilot and it's just like, pull the baby out, and then she just hands him the baby. I'm like, there are guts everywhere. You've got to put the intestines back in. What is going on?
Don't worry though, she's a doctor.
This is like the first C-section that's been performed since Caesar.
She's like, I've got it.
So Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman is an American Western drama television series, blah, 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 starring Jane Seymour, who the only thing Greg had to say about her was that she has 2 different colored eyes. That's her claim to fame. She's got like a blue eye and a green eye or something.
Who plays Dr. Because I've got this book. Jane Seymour, Guide to Romantic Living.
Wow.
I got this from the thrift store years and years ago. And Aaron pulled it out. He's like, oh, you got to talk about this book. Look at the back of it.
Oh, wow. This is in line with something I read about the show. I was definitely on the Dr. Quinn wiki for a bit, but she said that at the time she accepted this role, she said she would have accepted any role offered to her.
Okay.
So as Jane Seymour plays Dr. Michaela Quinn, a physician who leaves Boston in search of adventure in the old American West and settles in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And then it aired for 6 seasons from 93 to 98. And it was a hit, I think. And there were TV movies.
2 TV movies that aired after it got canceled. So it kept going. People wanted more Dr. Quinn.
What was really, really cute that I read is that this was one of the very few shows where fans could come and see it being filmed. They could pay to go on the set, and all the actors would like come out and sign autographs and take pictures with them. And they were just so happy to have their they come and visit them on the set. Isn't that so cute?
It is adorable. The vibe of this show is that it's very family friendly. It's very wholesome.
Yeah, very much like Little House on the Prairie, except a woman's the main character. But there are lots of kids in it. So it won a lot of technical and hair and makeup awards. Seymour won a Golden Globe in 96.
Oh, good for her.
It was in the top 100. I don't know. Maybe that's not that high. First season, it was ranked 19 and it was like 25, 49, 55, 58, 51.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad.
It was on Saturday nights.
My parents had a paper route when I was a kid, like a pretty intense one. And I always had to help stuff papers. That was the Saturday night thing we had to do. So my memory is just stuffing newspapers while watching Dr. Quinn.
That's really cute too.
I know.
No, it's just funny that my memory of this was always so cheesy and hokey, and now I'm just this middle-aged white woman with kids, and I'm like, oh, this is so sweet.
Aaron watched the pilot with me, which I was shocked that he wanted to. I was like, yeah, I'm going to watch Dr. Quinn this week. He's like, oh, I'll watch it. Yeah, I'll watch it. He said he's very into lady kitsch. Like, and so this really fell in line with his interest. So it was a double pilot, basically a movie length pilot. And it was slow paced. There wasn't a lot of drama. It was kind of structured a little oddly.
There wasn't one main arc. It was like lots of little vignettes.
And it was a long period of time too. It must have been like a year of time. I don't even know. It was hard to determine. But I have to say, it was odd because I feel like it was boring, but we weren't bored, if you know what I mean.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was pleasant. I enjoyed watching it.
I mean, I think as a teenager, I was like, blah. And now I'm like, Sully's so hot. I mean, I'll watch it for him.
Oh, Sully.
Sully is like the guy that's gone native that they end up getting married and having a kid. And
Just describe what he looks like, Rachel.
I mean, he's got big soft lips and
I like how you're describing Sully and you don't immediately mention his hair.
His hair was next. Long, shaggy hair.
With a braid, like a long braid.
I think he's got like blue eyes. He's handsome. He's very much like a Sawyer type. Sawyer from Lost.
Yeah.
I know you didn't watch Lost, but was a pretty boy, but now he's a bit rugged.
He's got perpetual 5 o'clock shadow.
I had so many questions about this actor. Did he actually learn a native language? I mean, he's speaking in Cheyenne. I can't imagine that he's just making up gobbledygook. He must have learned something.
I think so. He was convincing me.
Oh, yeah. What's crazy is the last scene. He says he's afraid of horses. And it's like, what? I'm like, wait, what?
My mind just did this flashback. It was like the end of The Usual Suspects where I'm like trying to remember. It's all piecing together in my mind. I guess he wasn't riding the horse the whole time.
You just assume that he was on a horse. And then he says he's scared of horses. And then you realize you've just seen him walking around with a wolf.
That's right.
And you're like, he's walking for hundreds of miles every day.
No, because they're in Colorado Springs in the 1800s. He's just walking around.
That kind of made me want to see the second episode. Is this going to be a thing? Is he going to learn to ride a horse?
I would love to see the episode where he learns to ride a horse. That would be wonderful.
I actually took notes this time. And one of my first notes was, so this always drives me crazy about period pieces. So you'll see a woman, it's the 1700s or the 1800s, and she's wearing like 25 yards of fabric on her body, right? She's got like 5 full skirts that are really wide, they're really heavy, a jacket, and then another jacket and a hat. And then you see her trunk, and her trunk is like 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall. Here's my trunk. So is this your one dress? I mean, there can't be another dress in there. And she shows up and she's got like 2 little tiny trunks. What is in the trunk?
It's like a Mary Poppins type of thing where you open it up and it's just endless. You know, you just keep pulling things out.
Do you think that in the real days that there'd be like one dress in each trunk and there'd be like 10 trunks?
I think at that time, people basically had one outfit they wore.
Not rich people though.
Yeah, and she's rich. She's from Boston. So this is almost the same kind of premise as Northern Exposure in that it is a doctor who is a fish out of water.
Oh, totally.
She was a doctor on the East Coast, but she shared a practice with her dad, who was also a doctor, and then he dies. And as soon as he dies, all of their patients are like, well, I'm not going to see you. You're a woman. You're not a real doctor. And so she loses all of her patients, but she still wants to doctor. So she decides to go to the frontier.
Well, she answers an ad for a doctor and they accept her. But then, of course, her name is Michaela and they just misread it and thought her name was Michael. So when she gets there, basically want her to leave. But there is the grodiest scene. I mean, there's a couple scenes where I was like, whoa. In this long play to get them to start taking her seriously, she goes to the barber / dentist and lies about a toothache. And he says, oh, that tooth needs to come out. And she says, okay, pull it. And she lets him pull out a perfectly good molar. Oh,
just so that
he would
be friendly to her.
I couldn't really understand it.
I didn't understand the play either. I didn't understand what she was trying to do.
It was never an implication. There was no lead up to that.
It was such a weird move. It was a plan. This is what I'm going to do to
ingratiate herself generally.
Yes, but I don't know why that would work.
And you need those molars back then, a healthy molar. But then at work, like the next scene, he's like, "Oh, that guy over there has a
lumbago.
Lumbago."
Whatever that means. That barber was played by Cole Meady.
He was only in the pilot.
Only in the pilot because he was busy being on Deep Space Nine. He had a gig. That scene where she gets her tooth pulled, I remembered that vividly. I was like, wow. Here it is. And then another scene that I remembered vividly, leading up to this happening, I was like, I know it's going to happen. I know it. The post office guy has a hearing problem. He's like, oh, I think I'm going deaf or whatever. And she's like, oh, let me check it out. She takes one of these ear trumpet kind of things and like sticks it in his ear. And then she's just like, oh, I know the problem. And she takes some tweezers and pulls out the biggest hunk of earwax you've ever seen in your life.
Not me, because that's what Greg pulls out of his ears.
Ew. Gross.
I put it on Instagram once and I was like, what do you think this is a picture of?
That's awful, Rachel.
Well, I was hoping she would pull out a cockroach or something. That seems like that's something more likely have in their ears.
Probably. I don't know.
She was getting a lot of easy ones.
All of the hard ones she failed on, I think. A lot of ladies died under her care during that pilot.
Oh, I got excited when I saw Diane Ladd. I'm like, oh, Diane Ladd's on this show. This is gonna be a good show. And then she gets bitten by a rattlesnake and dies. So this is like the main setup, is that when she dies, after she's become friends with they call her Dr. Mike, not Dr. Quinn really. And she says, please take care of my children. So then Dr. Quinn ends up kind of being the adoptive mother to these three kids, a teenage boy, and then a younger girl, and then a younger boy. Later on, like 3 or 4 seasons later, she and Sully get married and they have another daughter.
I like that Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman has something for ladies in a wide range of ages, because for the middle-aged lady, Sully is your man. And then for your younger teen lady, you got Matthew.
That's what in my notes I wrote. I remembered Chad Allen was in all the teen magazines, but I find him so unpleasant to look at. He's not unattractive. There's something about his expression that's a little off.
Did you know that he played the autistic child in the last episode of St. Elsewhere?
Oh, wow.
The dream, the entire world of St. Elsewhere is the fantasy of this child. That's him.
That's crazy.
I actually remember him from an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. I think I was like 10 at the time, and I think that was my sexual awakening. I was like, who is this? Dr. Quinn came out a couple years later, and then I was like, well, I'm in it for him. I will be watching.
Well, I stuffed my newspapers.
That's not just a euphemism.
So if I did my math correctly, Seymour is actually about 42 or 40-ish, and she's playing younger. I think she's playing 10 years younger or something.
Yeah.
In the pilot, she says her older sister's having a baby. And I was like, okay, I guess. But damn it, this bitch looks good.
She looks incredible.
Oh my God.
And she still looks good. Did you know
that the death becomes her formula around her neck?
Absolutely. She's posed for Playboy 3 times. And the most recent one was in 2018 when she was 67, making her the oldest woman to ever pose for.
Now I want to see this.
She looks good.
Yeah, she's had 4 kids. And it's crazy. She's named after one of Henry VIII's wives.
That's a fake name, you know.
Oh, it is?
Her real name is Joyce Penelope Wilhelmina Frankenberg.
Interesting.
So Jane Seymour is a stage name.
I remember when I was first heard that Henry VIII's wife was named Jane Seymour, I was like, wow, that's so confusing. Where I'm from, there's a town right near us called Chevy Chase, Maryland. And there was this actor named Chevy Chase. And it's like, can someone just explain this? Just once. He chose it as a stage name from the town. I think his grandfather was from there, or he visited there or something. Like, it's not a total coincidence.
Orson Bean is also on this show, and he has
I wish I had seen one with him in it, because he's always funny.
Orson Bean is also a stage name. And he has like a really funny story behind how he came up with his name. He was performing at this nightclub, and the band leader, he would introduce him with a different name each time. And it was always something funny. There was one night where there was like, introducing Roger Duck. The audience didn't like Roger Duck. And then one day it's like, okay, introducing Orson Bean. And like the audience went apeshit. He got like a representation deal out of that. He's like, I guess I'm Orson Bean.
Oh, these stories are so funny.
I know.
But I guess I felt like a real, there's lots of scenes where, of course, the main characters are sympathetic to the plight of the Indian. And then the bad guys are the army. They're just fed up with the Indians for whatever their reasons are. I just kind of want them gone. And then Sully and Dr. Mike and a few other people are more sympathetic. Hey, we did take all their land and like, kill them and everything. Maybe we should be nice to them. So the stance of the show is obviously on the right side of history. But, whenever there'd be something nice between the white people and the Indians, like I'd be like, oh, I can never not tear up at that. I cannot.
There were so many parts of the show where I was like, oh, like the last scene when Sully brings them all Christmas gifts. Oh.
It's like, how did you keep all that in your coat?
I know. One was a dog.
A dog. I actually don't know what he gave Matthew. He's like, clank, clank, here you go. And they don't even zoom in and out there. Like, it was something. Who cares?
A knife or something? I don't know.
They did take me out of the show a little bit because what he gave her was this machine carved plaque with her name on it. I'm like, He did not carve that. If he had carved someone with someone's name on it, it would have looked like a sign from a summer camp. That chunky carving with the letters. And he did like a machine lettered in like sans serif font.
Beveled. Yeah.
Beveled.
It would have looked like one of those signs that you would buy at the Ohio State Fair or something. The Coxes,
I keep thinking of mashups I want to see, and then I get really sad. They only exist in my imagination. I'll never see them. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Westworld.
There is a Funny or Die video from a few years ago called Dr. Quinn, Morphine Woman. The idea is that Dr. Quinn is being rebooted, but it's a modern era, so it's basically like a ripoff of Breaking Bad. And they got everybody.
Really?
They got Jane Seymour, they got Sully, they got the post office guy, they got Orson Bean. And like the whole premise is that Dr. Quinn uses morphine to fix everyone's ailments. And so as a result, she has addicted this entire town to morphine. And now she's a morphine queen pin. Not bad.
Well, yeah, that's all my notes. It's a very cute show. Sully's hot.
Sully is hot.
Dr. Quinn's pretty good. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to watch it probably.
I think I might watch one more episode.
Joe Lando's the guy that plays Sully. His website is called joelandofriends.weebly.com.
And he looks good even now. In the Dr. Quinn Funny or Die video, he looked good.
He looks like someone that would have been on a soap opera.
He was.
Like, soap opera face. Oh, okay.
Yeah. He started out on like One Life to Live or something. I think after Dr. Quinn, he also went back to soap operas. He's like a soap opera guy.
When you were to ask me to describe him, that's kind of what I wanted to say.
To me, he looks like the cover of a Harlequin romance.
Oh, yeah.
This flowing hair, this rugged look. You could just imagine him clutching Jane Seymour in this dress with a corset.
Would you ever watch Outlander?
I would watch Outlander. It's a show that I've been intrigued by. It's on my list of, I'll check that out someday.
I'm thinking about it.
I gotta kind of find something new to watch. So I might dip into it.
I want Aaron's Mad Magazine. I tried.
His was like Dr. Quirk, Medicine Woman. Mine is inspired by Jane Seymour. She had to say she was a doctor so many times. Every other thing she said was, well, I'm not a woman. I'm a doctor.
I'm not a lady.
Or like, don't worry, I'm a doctor. By the end, I was like, this is a drinking game. I feel like I should take a drink every time she says doctor. My Mad Magazine is just doctor, woman, woman, doctor.
I like that.
It made me laugh. It just like gets right to the point.
Oh, there's one funny thing where she sees Sully talking to the Indian chief and she says later, what did you say to him about me? He said, he asked who you were and I said you were the medicine woman. And then in one of the last scenes, the Indian says something to Sully and she's, what did he say? And he said, he's given you your Indian name, medicine woman. I'm like, you called her that an hour ago. He said, okay, you can be called that. Yeah, I don't have anything for Accent Corner. Everyone's doing fine. Jane Seymour, you can kind of tell she's covering a British accent, but it's whatever.
But it works because she's supposed to be from Boston.
Boston.
In that era, too.
Yeah.
Everyone in Boston from that era just sounds like a posh British person. Mm-hmm. She did do a weird, purposely bad accent in the pilot when...
Oh yeah, you won't come in here. There's no one in here but me and my kin.
There's these army dudes who are looking for an Indian who has been injured, and she's sheltering them and trying to keep them from coming in and discovering Sully and his friends. And she puts on this shawl and she's like, it's just little old me and my kin. We're not doing anything.
That was because she didn't want them to recognize her from an earlier scene.
Right.
Right. Okay.
She covered up her hair. She knew people would recognize her from her hair.
Oh, yes.
Which is true because she does have
nice hair.
Beautiful hair. Most 90s. It's tough.
Throughout history, there are always people who, this term is probably canceled, like go native, but there were always people that went and lived with the Indians or vice versa, whether intentional or people forcing them to do so. So I don't think that was necessarily ahistorical, but I was just wondering whether, I'm always trying to say, like, would this show be canceled today? Or
that is interesting to think about. I'm not sure.
I mean, it's sympathetic to the whole cause.
It's very sympathetic, but he is also appropriating whatever. But he's also friends with them. I don't know. Some of my best friends are Indians, you know?
Yeah, nothing really 90s. I think this is the first period piece we've done.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that probably is the most 90s thing for me, is the fact that this was on network television in the 90s and not on like a Hallmark channel. This would definitely be relegated to a cable network for women.
Yeah, like When the Heart Calls.
When Calls the Heart, I think is what it's called, which is just grammatically a nightmare. When Calls the Heart, what the hell does that mean?
I can't think of any period shows that are on network.
And then also Chad Allen, even though he's in the frontier, he's got that 90s swoop. What you watching, Rachel?
Well, I wanted to do a full report on the new Dune, but I only watched half of it.
Oh no.
Whenever we wrap up now, I think we're going to watch the other half. Each of us decided we have about a 5% interest in watching it. Okay, we've already each seen collectively 6 Dune movies. But whatever, it's here and it's only available till November 21st. So I guess we'll just watch it. But after about 10 minutes, I was like, all right. I mean, I read the fucking books.
Yeah.
A million years ago, but I read them all.
You gotta do it.
But I think the thing about Dune is that, so a lot of sci-fi that I think is interesting is grounded in some sort of scientific reality and likes to make predictions, like Blade Runner, or things that are based off of Robert Heinlein or Arthur C. Clarke, are kind of based off of their interest in science. And I don't think that Dune is in any way based in any kind of scientific reality.
No.
And so it has to be taken as an allegory.
But what is it an allegory for?
Colonization.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like they're just colonizing this planet and the natives are trying to protect the natural resource. I mean, it's all pretty telegraphed. But then there's the whole stuff with the Ben Gesserit, which is this shadowy group of kind of like witches. The main character's mom is one of them. And I made an analogy between the Ben Gesserit, who could basically control their minds, control their bodies. Like they can control their bodies to the extent that they can control whether they have a baby girl or a baby boy.
Really?
Okay, I had a revelation watching it, which is that we all like watching superhero stuff because you're like, oh, what if I had powers and I had this? But if you know anything about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, it's kind of like a take charge version of therapy where you can kind of start to be aware of, for one example, you have a bad day and you're like, oh, I never get ahead. I never have anything good happen to me, or like everyone else has good things but me. We have those thoughts all the time.
Sure.
So that's called catastrophizing. And a lot of people don't know what that is. But once you have a label on it, then you start having those thoughts. You can say, oh, wait, it's a way to rationalize emotional responses to things. And for me, it was like a really big help in my early 20s when I learned about all that stuff. And then I could kind of identify those thoughts and learn to sort them where they go. I was just thinking that being a Ben Gesserit is like CBT. It's like learning how to control your mind and what you think. And it would be cool. I mean, it's kind of like, it's a general fantasy to be able to unlock hidden potential in your body or your mind. It wasn't there.
Yeah, before. The human potential movement, baby.
Like, remember in Defending Your Life with Albert Brooks and Meryl Streep, and then he gets to the afterlife and they're like, you only used 3% of your brain. Like, what? Only 3?
There was that Bradley Cooper movie, Limitless. It's like
he takes a pill, yeah.
And it's like 100% of his brain is being used. He's amazing.
He made a slew of movies before he hit it big with the Silver Linings Playbook. And I feel like all those were just kind of like, let's just not talk about those.
Yeah. Do you remember there was a movie about him being a chef and it was called Burnt?
Kitchen Confidential, the TV show. It was a sitcom, 1 season, 2005 with Bradley Cooper. And Bradley Cooper played Jack Bourdain, the Anthony Bourdain character.
Oh, wow. So when he made this movie that isn't based on Anthony Bourdain, he was like, I already have the knife skills. I had to learn it for the show. Bradley Cooper had quite a funny way to the top. A lot of weird small things.
I will always kind of love him because I was a big Alias fan and he was on Alias.
Wow. I never watched Alias.
It was good. It had so many twists and turns and Victor Garber's in it.
Maybe I should watch Alias. Oh,
my God. And who's that actor that played her love interest that also spoke French? What happened to that guy?
was Scott Speedman on Alias as well? No, Scott Foley. I was mixing up my Felicity guys.
Oh, Scott Foley is just like a vacuum of personality. He just got nothing. Oh yeah, I was big into Alias. They had a great cliffhanger one season. She got knocked out in a fight or something. And then the next season starts and it's like 2 years later. And she wakes up and she goes back to the office and everyone has moved on. And they're like, you were gone for 2 years.
Ooh, what streaming service is Alias on? I'm going to look it up after this.
So I watched half of Dune. I'll let you know how that happens. I was watching a bunch of American Horror Story and then I watched like 3 seasons in a row. And then I was like, oh, I think I'm getting burned out on horror. I was listening to a podcast with Sam Harris and he was talking to this friend of his, a philosopher who he talks to a lot named Paul Bloom. And they were talking about, I mean, it's something that I've thought of before, but it kind of blew my mind hearing about it again. Up until 100 years ago, anything that a human being saw was something they were seeing in real life. Movies were invented and suddenly you're seeing things that aren't real. And we haven't really evolved past that. So even though our modern mind can see a bunch of horrible things and go, oh, this isn't real, on some level, we are viscerally experiencing it as a real thing.
Oh my God.
If it was real, I mean, there's just a tiny bit of us that I think we are desensitized to a degree, but yeah, I'm just saying that I was watching a lot of horror and feeling like, oh, I feel kind of gross.
Yeah.
I've just seen like a lot of people get murdered.
That'd be too much.
And then I was like scrolling around trying to find other stuff. And it was like the only things that I wanted to watch were horror. And I was like, oh, I gotta find something else. It was nice to watch Dr. Quim. Oh yeah, hyperstimulation. Like we're all kind of in a state of hyperstimulation all the time.
I have to say, if you are suffering from hyperstimulation, I think Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, is a wonderful anecdote for it. I think I described it to Aaron as chicken soup. It just felt very warm. It felt very comforting. It just felt nice.
Well, I got so sick of it that I watched that movie that I told you about, which, just to be clear, I don't recommend. I'll Follow You Down. I was just on Prime and it came up and I was like, what's this? And I just started watching it and then I had to finish it and it had the weirdest ending. But what I learned from it was that Haley Joel Osment is a great adult actor. And that's all I wanted to know.
Good for him.
He's not good looking, but he can act. And in the movie, he's supposed to be the child of Rufus Sewell and Gillian Anderson. You know, sometimes two good looking people get together and that kid is not good looking.
I've seen it happen.
I think a really, really good looking person is most of the time a fluke. The people above them and people below them are just flukes as well, or just like normal.
It happens all the time. It happens more than people want to talk about.
I know.
I went to see a movie in a theater this week.
Ooh.
It was my first foray into in-person movie theater experiences since the pandemic. The last movie I had seen in the theater was Uncut Gems.
Wow.
So it was a long time ago. I went to see The French Dispatch.
Oh, how was it?
It was good. The new Wes Anderson movie. And it is over the top Wes Anderson. It is so stylized. The movie began and I started laughing because it was just, it looked like he had constructed a little diorama and he was moving his actors around in this little playhouse. It looked great. It was a kind of a mixed bag. It's a bunch of vignettes. The premise is that this is the last issue of a magazine called The French Dispatch, which is the French edition of a newspaper from Kansas. For some reason, they have an office in Ennui, France. They do a dispatch every month. It's like a magazine and all of the covers sort of look like New Yorker covers. And of course, Bill Murray is the proprietor and it's filled with a bunch of quirky people. It definitely felt like a game for him to be able to work with as many of his favorite people as possible. I know how I can do it. I'll do like 5 different stories and they'll all be in the different little sequences. Jason Schwartzman is in it. He says 4 lines. There are so many people in it. They can't even get enough screen time.
That's how we got them all to do it. He's like, it's 2 hours of work and then you're done.
It looked beautiful. There was an animated sequence that I really enjoyed that I stayed watching the credits because I wanted to see who's the artist who did these illustrations, who did the animated sequence, who did the magazine covers. I don't know. I still don't know. I was waiting forever. They never credit people like that. It's a shame.
My skill in art school was I was a good copyist. Like I could imitate different styles. And I always thought it would be fun to have that as a job where I just have to kind of do specific stylized recreations of artworks or something for movies. But a guy that I went to college with, who was a really, really talented painter and draftsman, especially with figures, he was really good. He did the portrait of the main guy from Empire. The Terrence Howard guy has like a painting in his office of himself.
Oh, and I bet he gets a little residuals every time that shows up on screen. I think that's the way it works. It depends on the contract, I guess. Usually you get a little scratch every time it shows up.
That must be fun to keep track of.
I feel like I would try too hard. I'd be like, what's this 75 cents for? Which of my little things?
Well, remember on Seinfeld, Jerry would get those checks for like 75 cents every time he appeared on some Japanese TV show. And he said it wasn't even worth to sign it because he was getting a hand cramp signing the checks. But nowadays you have direct deposits. You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
There's a really gross term that has just sprung up because, so many people sign things digitally. I read this whole other article about how signatures are going to become obsolete one day because they're so stupid. They make no sense.
People used to ask to see the back of your credit card. They don't do that anymore.
Hopefully it'll be gone. But the last death throes of the signature is that they want you to really sign something and then take a photo of it and send it back to prove that you really signed it. And they'll say, no, not a digital signature. It needs to be wet signed.
Ew.
Because I'm selling a house now and they're like, no, this needs to be wet signed. I was like, ugh, gross term. I've seen wet sign and wet signature a bunch lately.
That's gross. Yeah, I don't like that at all.
Although when you hear it, you know exactly what it is. So I would say it's a very accurate description of what it is.
But it is something where I'm like, yeah, get rid of it. It sounds gross. Like if someone put that on the ballot at like a local issue, we're getting rid of wet signed paperwork. I would be like, yeah, absolutely. I don't even need to research what that is. Get it out of here. Gross.
Okay, well, I think that's it for Dr. Quimmin.
Dr. Woman, Medicine Woman. Dr. Woman, Woman Doctor.
All right, this has been Sliders and Wings. And you can email us at slidersandwings@gmail.com.
That's right. And you can see us on Instagram at Sliders and Wings Pod.
All right, well, have a good night.
Good night, Rachel.
All right, bye.